Jonathan Chandler coming to you from the Virginia School of Traditional Arts. Back on our butterfly bench. We've had to put this one on hold for a little while. We had some other jobs that were a little more pressing than this one, and so we've got back on this to try to get this one finished up by middle of January or there. We had right many of the parts. We had this butterfly already made. We had the leaves and the flower already made. Here are the leaves. I just took several minutes and finished welding them all up. I had them tacked together before, but I finished welding them all up. We've ground them pretty smooth. We'll probably go over it one more time before we paint, but we're getting the bulk of it off. Yesterday I went through and we drilled a few holes, and I'll show you what those are for. And we also added on some bolts. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we got some bolts here that we've added on. My goal is to be able to take this butterfly on and off as needed, basically for painting. It's difficult to paint something behind all of these scrolls. I mean, it'd be impossible to paint up in there. So my goal is I'm going to build the back of the bench. The butterfly and possibly some of the scrolls will be removable. We'll see how it goes. And so that we can paint these things easier, and always in the future, this is going to stay around close to the house, so always in the future, if I need to take it and repaint it, I can pull this butterfly off and make it easy to paint again. So, got y'all a little closer now. I have these 2 blocks of wood. My goal for this back, this is the back of a bench, so I want the bottom of the back up some, the top back some, and the sides in some. So I've taken, blocked up the flower and the leaf with these little blocks of wood, and we're going to see if we got it in the right place. We took some time the other day and played with these bolts and holes and different things. right long time. Longer than necessary for certain. Pretty good. I like the way the butterfly is above this now. With it all the way tight, it's basically doing exactly opposite of what I would like it to do, which is, well, it's being up in the front, I guess. Take a look at it good. That would be tight. And this is up, like we were talking about, in the base of your back, basically. And we got a little room on these here, so we can wiggle them a little bit. Made the holes bigger than I actually needed to on purpose. So we get a little playroom. Something like that. Something like that. Alright, that's right. Attitude adjustment. Attitude adjustment. It worked. All right. That seems to work pretty good. But we want it to come in and out with some ease. And I would love for that to have touched so I could weld there, but I'll stick a little piece underneath there. A little piece of something. We're going to leave it in the same orientation it's in. I'm just sticking this underneath my flower petal here. Figure out which way is the best, probably this way. And I'm leaving it long on purpose because I'm going to be able to break it off here, hopefully. And so we just use it to block the weld from falling through the hole. Then we removed it. Now we can go back and that's a pretty good weld on that. Looking pretty good. You can see the take that off. You can see the line penetration where the weld is. So we'll clean it up with a wire brush and it'll be back to going again. And just to verify we haven't moved anything. She falls right in there. That's what we were after. Want it to fall right in, not struggle with it, because when you get it painted, the last thing we do is have to beat on it or scratch up our paint to fit it on this one to go together. That's the idea. We'll let that cool off a little bit and we'll grind that up, clean up this leaf better, clean up this weld that we're going to see and the ones on the back, of course. But I think that will hold it. I know this is hard to see on the table with the shine of the lights, but I've got my back set here and I measured it squarely as I could and come up with about 36 inches is from the outer edge here to the outer point here is 36 inches, give or take a little bit, depending on how you measure, I guess. And so what I did is initially I thought I would want it to start to have a 36-inch back and splay out. That's what this line was, my initial straight line that's laid out. But I drew that on the table and I didn't really like that. It would have been okay, but it looked like the only pointy corner in everything else is round situation. That would definitely be the easiest. The easiest would be square, and that don't look very much like much. Material I'm going to use is this plastic wood. It's supposed to last a long time. My only complaint with it is, unless you spend like $300 a board, it's got these gaps in it. And so when you cut it off, it's not solid. It looks like total crap. And so what I do to overcome that is I'll put a piece of metal that lines up with the top of this and make that a side that covers it up, and all you're seeing is the edge of the piece of metal then, just a little skinny edge. And in this case, I decided to do an oval, kind of an oval, not quite round, kind of start at your 36 and end at 36 in the front, but have it come out here 2 inches and kind of make an oval. And when I actually get to cutting everything, I'll do a better picture, do some math on it. I was just sketching today. But an oval on both sides, because my original plan is that I'm going to have 3 legs on each side, just like the butterfly. So I'll have a leg here, one in the middle, and one here in this front corner. And the legs will be, the middle one sticks out farther than the other 2, just like a butterfly's legs, kind of. If you ever look at an insect, that usually the middle leg sticks out farther than the other 2, sticks out to the side. But that's my original idea, and I would like to keep that idea. And the other lines you see I have drawn here are just the actual pieces that I'll need to cut. What I use for this framework, this will actually set on, is 1.5 by 2 or 1.5 by 2.5. I forget. This is drawn as 2, but this gives me my links basically. And I messed up on one of the benches I did earlier, and my math won't right. I did 15.5. Well, that ain't right. It's 16.5. It's 5. It's 3 5.5. I don't know what got tired or something, and I did 15.5. But that was incorrect, so we're gonna make it right. And this also has a thickness to it, so what generally happens is either you're covering up part of your design, which is what it'll do if we just lay it down there, or we'll weld a scab piece on the back of this piece so that we can pick this up the height of the board, and so your whole design will show. And that's what I'm going to do too. So that'll make our design show up a little better. But we'll get our pieces out and cut this thing up. All right, got my pieces rough cut out. Next step is to grind them up, get them prepared to weld. This one's ever so slightly short, so I may grind these 2 down, or one of these 2 down to get it to do a little better. We can weld it at that length, but this would be better if it was tighter. But by the time we get them cleaned up and all the edges prepped for welding, a lot of it need different anyway. I did leave myself an extra 1/2 inch. Made this an extra 1/2 inch wide to give me a little more space back here in the back, mainly for when I put this on. I might can have a little bit of a gap there, so you're not having to worry about these things poking out, because the shape of them matters. Sometimes you have to cut around whatever shape to make the thing work. So I figure I'd leave myself another 1/2 inch, and that would give me a little more room. But it's working out pretty good. This material is 2 by 1.5. 2 by 1.5. And when we put it in here, we're going to pay attention to which side has got the seam. It's a welded seam on these things. And I'm gonna put that welded seam down. I ran into a little problem on one of the last benches in that I was drilling into that welded seam, putting my screws, and that was just an annoyance. It just makes your drill bit want to work harder and not go straight, because it's not the same thickness all the way across. It wants to like do funny stuff. So we'll make sure that all the welded seams are down, and so that's what we got. We got it oriented that way right now. Talk to you a little bit about my setup here for my first weld. I want this to be 90, of course, and I want to weld on the edges of this piece and all the way around, basically. But I don't want to have to do a whole lot of cleanup. Nobody's going to see this. I don't want to have to grind on this, and if we do it right on the edge right here and grind off the weld smooth so we can put our next piece on, that weakens it a whole lot. You've lost part of your weld. And so what I'm doing is I'm using this is 3/8 square, this little piece as a spacer, so I'm keeping this bar back off the edge of this one 3/8 of an inch. I've come in, I've kind of blocked up my square here so it's not down on the round parts of this. You get down on the round corners of this metal, it's hard to see if you're square or not. And so we put this little board in here, and I got a little piece of metal at this end just to keep it more or less level. And we're checking our edges. And the way I do it is I'll pick it up and down, and if it's not rubbing just ever so slightly, it's not square. There we go. Rubbing a little bit on that end, a little bit on this end. And so that's square. And I've got it clamped to the table so it can't pick up and down when you start throwing heat to something. Sometimes it does weird stuff. And I'm going to tack this really good in a couple places, right here on the top. And I'm going to work my way down this thing. I'm going to do this other end next, because those are the critical ones to keep your thing square. The middle one, as we showed you earlier, is a little bit short, and so it'll fall right in there and we can manipulate it anyhow we want. Basically, its only goal is to be in the middle. By pulling these back from the edge a little bit, this also brings our bolt pattern back from the very edge. I don't like the bolts or the screws or whatever you're going to use to put down your seating material to be like, an inch from the edge of it. That looks weird to me. So I'm bringing it back, and so that allows me to scoot it back. Well, this is 2 inches. That's 3/8, and then by the time you get out here with a curved part, part of it'll be, maybe 3 inches from the edge. So that's the goal. So we're just going to set up and weld. I'm going to move my square and my stuff out the way so it's catching on fire. We got our new bottom tool set up for our fly press, and I've got our round tool that we made in the last video in here. And this tool works by moving these rods back and forth, making different spacing for bends. You can bend any kind of material you want. Solid material wouldn't do good for a pipe, really. It'd mash a pipe in, I think. But we're going to start out with it the narrowest, and I have let this down to make sure that that's hitting pretty center, because I want it to be an even bend. So that's what that's doing. It's hitting pretty centered in there, and this is pretty straight. We want this to be straight, parallel with our pieces. And so that's looking about right. And so we're going to push it back up just a little bit. Now I have marked some marks on my metal because I want to make 2 pieces that are the same. And so I'm going to start on one end, I guess, and come down a little bit and see what we got. I'm going to keep this in the middle. I'm going to line my marks up with the center of this the best I can. And I'm going to start by letting this thing down. And then I'm going to move my stop because I want to make these the same. So I want to go down the same amount each time. I'm gonna go down about the thickness of my finger. Yeah, right about there, I'm gonna say. All right, so I've never done this before, so we're gonna give her a shot. I'm gonna make sure that my metal looks parallel. The metal looks parallel here. Alright, that's what we got. An even curve was what I was looking for. And to basically match it, I guess, all the way around. And it's more of a, right now it's more of an octagon, or a, whatever Mark says, like an octagon shape, like faceted. But I think that will do for my purposes, what I'm looking for. Something along that lines. This needs to look curved. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth curved, but it needs to look curved. And we want this edge to be down the depth of our board here, plastic wood board. And so when this comes in there, it'll be either just level with it or just slightly below it like it is now. Just ever so slightly below it would be fine. And of course we'll cut this, the new board, we'll cut it to match our piece here. Scribe it in there so it'll match good. That's the idea. Now the trick with this thing is I want to make two that match, and that's why I was trying to set this up under the fly press, in that it will hopefully do pretty good. But that's the idea. Alright, that's our matched pair. Like I said, not exactly a circle. I could have took smaller bites, I guess, and made it a perfect circle, but I just needed it to be roundish shape, and I needed them to match is what I was looking for. So here like this and like this. That will be my seat. Of course, I got to cut them to length. I made them a little long on purpose because I had no idea how that would work. And being that you're not bending right at the edge of it, you got to leave it a little long. But we can line it up probably on that first mark, and or split the difference out. Probably it'll be the roundest looking. That's our bench bottom, and we'll buy some of this and run it out here, and we'll just have to trim it some. There'll be 3 pieces of it, and just trim it off a little bit to make it fit in there. But it's the right height, more or less. We can jack this up, and when we go to weld it, we may jack this up. I don't want this metal sticking proud. I want it just at the top of it. And so that's working out pretty good. We got that part done, and trim these up and weld it. Alright, on these ends here we gotta block up something or cut them on a 45, which I don't have a good way of doing, and you could weld them without doing this. But to set my screws back like I want, I gotta put them on the inside, and so this leaves this opening here. And so what I do is I cut out a little piece of metal to fill that in, because I don't want, last thing I'd want is a bee's nest or something in here, and some little kid run up and want to play with this or jump on it or whatever, and they get stung. So on all my stuff, I make sure that any kind of cavities are filled and sealed up best I can from insects getting in there and causing problems. There's other ways to do this, but this is my method. I just cut a little piece of metal that fits up in there. just got done welding and grinding this up. Got it back to where everything's round and smooth. We are putting this out in the public, so we got to check all of our edges to make sure we're not making them sharp. And before we paint, we'll go over them one more time, make sure. But right now, it's pretty good. And this is our plan at this moment. Get this something like that. The next pieces I need to make are the legs. And probably not that big a spiral, probably something more in the, I don't know, palm sized deal here. And then we got to figure out how to make this knee curve back and be plumb. And this distance from here to the bottom down here needs to be, well, we have 1.5 inches and then we have 1 inch board, so we got to do some subtracting. Then we're going to have a so we got a leg that's going to be thick here. This will be the leg. It comes down skinny till it spirals. Okay. Well, we got to work on our height from this top part to where it touches the base plate. So our base plate's going to be about 3/4. We're going to have 2 pieces of 3/8, so it'll be about 3/4. We have our top piece here that the seat is mounted to, and that's 1.5 inches. And then on top of that's a 1 inch piece. And then probably what I'm going to do is attach a flat piece of metal from across here all the way up, probably. That will strengthen my edge. Also gives me plenty of space in here to weld this top of my leg to. I'll probably flatten that leg a little bit, not as much as this, but just making flat places so it's easy to orient it and to weld it. And so we're going to also have another line in here for another 3/8 piece of metal thickness. So that'll be our base plate for our legs. So what we're going to do is we're going to make 2 independent leg sections that will just weld on the bottom here, and that will complete our base, because we'll have the leaf and the base plate that's a leaf, and the top portion here, it'll just set underneath here and weld directly to that. But we need to figure out this measurement, so we're subtracting. Here's 3/4 and 1 inch and 2.5 inches, so that would be 2.5 inches plus 3/8 is 2 7/8 plus 3/4 would be 2 7/8 plus 3/4, 6/8. So we're looking at 3 3/8. 13, right? Yeah, 13. 3 3/8 minus our completed height, which we want it to be from the very top of the board to the very bottom of the concrete. We want this to be 17 inches, thereabouts. Doesn't have to be perfectly that, but we're pretty close to 17 inches. So we got to take 3 3/8. We're going to call it 3.5 just to make it easy, and subtract that. And that's going to leave us with 13 1/2. Add that back, make sure we're right. 7, yeah. 13 1/2 inches is what we want this to be. 13 1/2. Get rid of some of this other. So that's what we were at, 13 1/2 inches. Do a little math. So we want our leg to be 13.5 inches from where it's touching here at the base until it's touching at the, basically the top plate, I'll call it. So 13.5 inches. We're gonna continue to wind this up, make it a spiral, and then we'll come up here, whatever distance we need, and we'll bend this knee. But I'd like this to be a long sloping curve, and I'd like this to tilt under the bench right much and come back out. What I don't want is this sticking out past the bench and somebody tripping over it. So our edge of our bench should be here. Top comes out to there, and that's where our leg should be. Not sticking out. We don't want it sticking out over here. Alright, there's our jig set in our vise. And I have to finish making the spiral on this, the scroll work on that. And but anyway, when we get that done, we'll set this in here like this and pull it around, hot of course, pull it around, and then we get to this 90 here, we'll be right, and it'll give us that. The scroll, of course, will be bigger, so it'll sit back a little bit. I hope to be that big or bigger. But we want to make a knee in this, like it would be a scroll, and then a knee, and straight here. So that's what we're after, and that works pretty good. If we're gonna keep this forever, I'd have cut this off low and made it look a little better. But we're just gonna do a one and done kind of job with it, so it's not a big deal. If you're going to make jigs, pay attention to where your pieces you need it to hit. You don't want to put the welds there. That just throws you off. Down here, I tried to keep them down low while they were on the inside, and then we put a pretty good one on the bottom. hope y'all have enjoyed watching me make this. Like I said, you can see this in person at the Southern Virginia Botanical Gardens in South Boston, Virginia in a few months. We're waiting for it to warm up to do our dedication. But if you've liked watching this, please hit that like and subscribe button. That helps our channel. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.